Welcome to Siddhartha's Intent Australia, Living is Dying. My name is Sering. We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and other lands and recognise their connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Today it gives us much pleasure to have Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche with us to speak on the Bardo of Becoming. I think Rinpoche will be joining us shortly. So we'll just wait.
So let's rewind. And so I don't know from where you didn't hear. So I am going to start again and saying thank you to the lady of this cafe for inviting me to not necessarily talk on the Bardo of Becoming, but mainly for making me think of the Bardo of Becoming. That is something that I really want to thank you for making me do this. So the Bardo of Becoming, as you can understand, is one of the 4 or 6 or 3, or there's so many different ways of categorizing this intermediate state. But it can be categorized as the 4 intermediate states. Intermediate state of birth, and then from the moment of birth until the process of death is triggered, of dying is triggered. In Tibetan, it is called Gyene Bardo, birth and living or dwelling Bardo. And within that, also one can include Bardo of meditation and Bardo of dream state. And then after that, the Bardo of dying, when the actual process of dying, the dismantling of the elements have been triggered, and that there is not any kind of renewing involved in it, then it is the Bardo of dying, and then dissolving into the Bardo of getting into the next part, which is the Bardo of Dharmata. And then after that, the Bardo of Becoming. And that is a subject that I was reminded to remind you of, and I have been trying to remind myself of this. But this time, when I was encouraged to talk about it, I have had the opportunity to remind myself a little bit more seriously. I have had the fortune of receiving these teachings from my teachers over 20 years ago, more than 20, possibly 30 years, or even 35 years ago, many years ago, actually. But like many other deluded beings, like myself, I have been completely embroiled, entangled, stuck, and completely oblivious to the process of the Bardo. But now, at least thanks to Bardo Cafe, I've had the fortune of thinking of it seriously again. So this different reminders, the way of framing the teachings of the Buddha in this particular theme, is really framing the teachings of the Buddha in terms of the 4, 6, or different types of intermediate states. But in general, known to most of us followers of the Buddha's teachings, we can also say that there is no teaching of the Buddha that cannot be understood through the framework of the Four Noble Truths. The Noble Truth of suffering, Noble Truth of cause of suffering, Noble Truth of cessation, and Noble Truth of the path. These Bardo states, if we don't recognize and continue in our delusion, caught in it, going through pain, pleasure, and indifference, that is the definition of truth of suffering. And we are embroiled in it due to our ignorance and due to our confusion, due to our afflicted emotions. So that is undoubtedly truth of cause of suffering, based on the teachings of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas. Then we know how to understand them, how to remove that ignorance, and how to deal with the suffering, frustration, fear that our experiences in this and the next world unfolds. That is the truth of the path. And if we're able to remove the delusion, the fear, the confusion, then there is a prospect of truth of cessation. So I would like to remind you that this is something that is very important for us to know. And how does this truth of suffering manifest? This truth of suffering manifests because we have this tendency to be oblivious to what is happening in our daily lives, in the past, at present, and most probably will continue in the future, that we are oblivious to the truth of how things are. And it is with that perspective that we see our world, that we experience our physical world, that we relate to our emotions, and that we believe in our mindset. And one of them is that everything that we experience, just as we experience it, is true, real. It is unquestionably real. And that is how we view our world, our life. And so in order to address that, the teachings of the Buddha can also be framed under the heading of the Four Seals. And there are, of course, many, many teachings on that. And there is especially the teaching by Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche, whom I consider as one of my teachers. He spoke, what is not a Buddhist? Is that it? What makes you not a Buddhist? What makes you not a Buddhist? There, Rinpoche explains in a very concise, clear, and witty way of understanding this. This is how we view our world. And as someone interested in what the Buddha has to say, which I suppose us here on this in this audience are interested, then there's no way we can do away with this. That is, that all compounded things are impermanent, and that all emotions are suffering, and that the nature of all phenomena that we are relating to with our physical, through our physical world, emotional world, and mental or psychological world, that we label as, that we project as solid, permanent, as real. If we are curious enough to observe, to explore, we will find out that it is not as we have been projecting and believing. In fact, if we can have enough curiosity, not only using the Buddhist method, but even if we want to use mathematics, physics, especially quantum physics, we realize that the way we see the world isn't as we think it is. Somehow, yet, we believe it to be something solid, something real. According to the teaching of Buddha, he just says it clearly. It does not have the existence that we are attributing to it. Therefore, if it isn't that, then what can we say? That which we are attributing to it does not exist. It is devoid of existence. And therefore, what is freedom from suffering, cessation, or nirvana? It is when this delusion and all our behavior of our physical actions, our emotions, what we say, what we think, when those deluded beliefs and conduct cease to be, then peace is possible, cessation is possible. That is really the way we want to see things. Similarly, we need to use that way of relating to things, whether it is while we're alive, whether it is while we are in the process of dying, and after having died, even in the intermediate state of having died and not having taken a rebirth, this is still valid. Because all those experiences of the mind is still compounded. Those emotions, grasping at them as we perceive them, is cause of suffering. They have no existence whatsoever if one takes the time or can take the time to observe, explore, analyze thoroughly. They don't have any existence. When they don't have existence, then what should we do? Should we just lock it up in a safe and continue with our usual habits? That kind of conduct is called deluded. Just like a mad person, even though mad or drunk person, even though they may be cold, still can run out in the frozen ice and get frostbite and lose their fingers. Basically, they're relating to their world in a very unhealthy way. We do that too. If we can analyze, check, explore, and have confidence in our own analysis, of course, based on whoever produces evidence, we need to be able to relate to it in a sane manner. This is what we need to try and do. The whole process of whether it is Bardo of living, dying, all the way to becoming and then another living, should be based on this kind of true, real analysis that brings about an experience of the truth, as true as we can get to. Is it still working? So, as I am to talk about the Bardo of Becoming, it suggests that we have left the body behind. Meaning our life force has been severed. the way we take birth is because of the joining, it is said, of the essence of the parents, of the father and mother, to which our consciousness gets stuck to, or is associated with, or conceived. And then, while we are alive, we're still connected with that. And it is said, at the time of death, again, these two essences meet. While we're alive, these two essences are kept separate, just like a magnet. You know, a magnet, when the two poles, what is it called? The same poles are put together, they are, what is it called? Not attracting, repelling each other. So while we're alive, that force that repels each other are kept in balance. And it is said that when we die, that there is an imbalance in this. And then these two forces, positive and negative, meet. It is said at that time we had these experiences of white, red, and dark light. That's when the essences meet. So those more detailed parts, you can look in the teachings on Bardo. You can find them. This is not the subject here. These experiences, there's so many ways of translating this vocabulary. Some call it the experience of appearance, increasing, obtaining. At that time, when the dissolution happens, then the luminosity of death is experienced. But if we don't have any kind of training, then we don't really recognize them for what it is. And then we get deluded. We experience, I suppose, paranoia, or rather, because we don't know the real story, then we relate to everything with paranoia. Even when we are not dead, when we're alive, when you experience a little bit of paranoia or a bit more paranoia, somebody's smiling can be thought of as they are making fun of me. Somebody's just breathing. We might think, oh, they are sighing at us. These are just misperceptions that happen. Now, when something like this happens, when the delusion, the experiences are manifold, more powerful, and our confidence of our own mind's experience being just our mind's experience is so low, then it is so easy to believe that all of these perceptions are a danger to us. So these are mistaken perceptions that we have. And then, very quickly after that, we enter again into another experience. Just like a dreamlike experience. And it is said that we take or we identify with the Bardo experience, Bardo identity. Just like in a dream. Before you fall asleep, you have a certain thing that you identify with. But in your dream, who do you identify as? Are you even surprised that you are flying sometimes in a dream? You take it for granted. You don't think, how did I defy gravity when you're having a dream you're flying? Do you? Have you ever had that thing? When you're dreaming, do you think, what has happened to Newton's idea? Am I the first person? Can I make this into a thing? You don't think that. You just take it for granted. That is the kind of identity. You identify with it with such belief as if that is how it is. You don't question it. But at that time, you have arisen as a dream body, or in this case, the body of somebody in the intermediate state who has left behind their human body that obeys a law of physics. And it is said that in the pure experiences prior to that, when you experience, for example, the red light, or the dissolutions, the white light, it is meant to be like a moonlight, and the red light is like a, I suppose, sunrise or sunset kind of light, or dark light. During that time, in the sutras, it is said that you could have experiences of past karma that is going to put you into different realms. For practitioners who have practiced at that time, they might experience that they're going to be reborn either in some of the Buddha fields. I heard from my father that his mother was a very avid devotee of Amitabha. She used to recite the prayer to be reborn in Sukhavati every day. It's quite a long prayer by Chanik. Every day, and she used to hardly sleep. And towards the end, then she told him, I think something's going to happen to me because now it's been a week. I see Amitabha everywhere. Every place doesn't look like this world anymore. So for those of you who are avid devotees of Amitabha, in fact, whether we say Amitabha, Avalokeshwara, Guru Padmasambhava, they're the same. Whoever we have strong devotion to, If we can continue with that throughout the day, then this kind of experience can happen. And if not, whatever is in store in us, or rather, whatever we have downloaded in our program, and whatever is next going to come about will be seen at that time. Whether we're going to be born human, animal, in the God realms, demigod realms, hungry ghosts, or whether we're going to experience the delusions of the hell realms, we will get a preview of that. And these you can read in the sutras. Let me see what the name of one of the sutras is. One of them is in something called Tenpa in Tibetan, and in the 84,000 it's called the Application of Mindfulness for Sacred Dharma. In there are the descriptions taught by the Buddha. And the reason for these experiences to happen to us is because the seed is in us. And because we have the seed in us, and then when the conditions of the elements in our body is becoming brittle or dissolving or dismantled due to the fact that they're impermanent. Then it is said that we will hear sounds, sights. So when the consciousness at the time of death, it is dissolving into the natural state, the absolute state, the most subtle state of how things are. If we don't notice it, if we don't recognize it, then the moment it arises, it dissolves, we don't recognize it. And then we are in this intermediate state. It's not that this doesn't arise, it's just that we don't recognize. Just for us, even in our daily life, let us say that we're trying to train our mind, and we want to train our mind so that we don't become like a wild animal, so that we don't go, what is it called, down the rabbit hole. You know the story of Alice in Wonderland. The moment we notice our habits, emotions, the triggers, if we notice it, recognize it, it's always there. We can recognize it and not follow it. But for many of us, we don't notice it. And when we notice it, we have no training, so we just jump into it. And then we enter a different world. a world of infatuation, a world of anger, world of delusion, world of pride. Similarly here, this is also what's happening. Because we don't notice the nature of our own being, our own awareness. Even if it is just in front of us, we don't notice it. We just enter into another delusion. So, at that time, what is important is that we recognize, we notice. And when we do notice it, it is important to turn our mind towards positive actions. In one sense, we can say that, oh, this is what we have to do at the time of death. But not only at the time of death. It is something we need to do right now when we are facing our own delusions, our own demons of anger, pride, jealousy, ignorance. We need to do that. Without doing it now, at that time, it's not going to magically happen. You know, us human beings, we think that we are very, very logical, intelligent. Like if you go in the lift, you have to press the button. And if you want to be successful in business, you have to make certain decisions. We do know that things are based on causes and conditions. But somehow, with our emotions, we seem to think that it is completely magically going to happen. I'm afraid that is not the case. Many of us were obnoxious, obsessed, sentient beings. From the moment we came out of our mother's womb, are we any different? Apart from the fact that we have figured out certain things, like how to press a computer so that it opens up, and how to type things on it that I want to see, so that the algorithm of that particular social media will only show me what I want to hear, and then believe that that is the truth. Somehow we believe that. And this is also the case, will be the case at the time of intermediate state. So recognizing, however annoying it is, recognizing, knowing, becoming aware, accommodating truth is so important. And when we accommodate truth, then engaging in the antidote for what our ailment is. It is important that that motivation, that intention is something that corresponds to truth. Such as this experience is dreamlike. It is something that does not have solid, true existence. That it is just a figment of my own delusion. If one is able to do that, then it is said that it is possible to be free. Because at that time, we are not bound by this physical body. The possibility of becoming free at that time is multiplied at least by 7-fold. So it is much more powerful. So I think you know what this means by intermediate state. It basically means in between. And it is said that as long as our mind, our awareness, our relating to the truth is not as it is, meaning that we are not understanding, mainly realizing, relating to, be it outer phenomena or our own mind, just as it is, but that we are not realizing its ultimate nature, its emptiness, its dharmata. Until we're realizing that, as long as we don't realize that, and we're not in it, then we are in an intermediate state of some sort. So here, this particular intermediate state is relating to the intermediate state after dying, after not realizing our nature. When the experience of dissolution happens and we actually dissolve, not realizing that, the Bardo of Dharmata, between that, after having died, and before taking birth. That is why it's called Bardo of Becoming. We are like on standby. I suppose we could call it Bardo of standby. Like somebody who's got a ticket, but they didn't book in advance. Either they didn't book in advance a proper seat, or somebody else didn't book for us. There's two possibilities. One is that we have done something terrible and we don't have to worry about booking. The prison authorities book for us, so make sure. So then you don't really need to worry about intermediate state or standby, or even have to deal with ordinary airport transit. Or you do something really great, that you have your own private jet, you don't have to worry about it. Most of us, what can we say, compared to them are the cattle class, economy class, or even compared to people on a private jet, we are all cattle class, even if it is, what is it, premium economy, business, or whatever you called it, this is all cattle. We have to go through transit. And in that transit, especially if you have not booked properly, then anything can happen. That is why it is becoming. Anything can happen based on conditions that can arise at that time. Even if we have a certain karma to go somewhere, but if the conditions are not present, or a sudden condition arises, then you can be pulled there. Could be positive, could be negative. So, because anything is possible, it can be translated, I think, as Bardo of anything is possible. Bardo of Becoming. Becoming sounds a bit too defined. Just for our private sake, of course, in the text you have to show something. Bardo of anything is possible, which means good, bad, you have no idea. And there, it is said that the physical appearance or sensation that you have in the beginning, you will have, because of your past habits, you will have a feeling that you look like what you look like before you died. And slowly, towards the other end of that time, you'll start to look like what you're going to become. So these are told not so that you can dream or fantasize. These are explained because even in that state, there's something one can do. So noticing, recognizing is quite important. It's like sometimes when you break up with someone, you still have the past habits and identification of the past life. And then when you are trying to get along with somebody else, then that other kind of thing starts to take shape. In the beginning, when you break up with someone, you send certain type of emojis. And then with the other part, the emojis change. How you relate to those emojis are also different. This is also something similar that happens at the time. So if any of you are in that situation, remember this is also what you would experience in the time of Bardo of Becoming. At that time, we don't have this physical body. As you know, we have died. At that time, do we know that? That's a different question. But we don't have this physical body, nothing tangible, physical. But there's something very subtle still there, something that we can identify. And so that can be seen by others in that intermediate state with similar, can we say, karmic status. If you're going to be born in a certain world, then you will share with beings that will be born in that world. So, if you're going to be born in the human realm, and you just came from the human realm, you might meet people there. If you're going to be born in the hell realm, you might meet similar people. If you're going to be born in the God realm, you'll meet similar things. It is said that even if you are going to be born, if you're going to be born as a sentient being in the God realms, then the sentient beings who are going to be born in the animal realms won't see you. But anyway, you will be relating to that kind of milieu, if you can say it. Just like, when you're traveling in the airport, most of the time we only notice more vibrantly people who have a similar direction as us, or similar, how can we say, background as us. Others doesn't mean that they're not there. We just don't notice them and don't see them. For example, when I travel, I notice Indians, French, Portuguese, Spanish, and now when I'm in Asian countries, I notice those Asian people. Most of the time, I don't. Whoever they are, I have no idea. But here it's different because you don't have that same, you don't share that same, I suppose, wavelength, bandwidth, when you don't notice them. But you still have a certain form. So this mental body, it's said that there's many kind of subtleties to it. The gross mental body is like the mental body that we have when we're dreaming. So anyway, we do have a subtle body that we are identifying with. And that subtle body has also certain qualities. One of its qualities is that it has, compared to us, certain miraculous power. It can travel quickly. In that, whenever you think of something, you're already there. And it has sight, ability to see, smell, hear. Even the sense of sensation, touch. Even it is said, even if where you're going to be born, you might lack those faculties while you're in the intermediate state, all those faculties are there. It is said that, and also one of the abilities that you have is that you can, as I said, travel like at the speed of not just light, speed of thought, which means it can go through matter. there's true things that it cannot transcend when it is in contact with the cause of birth. If you're going to be born a human or an animal, etc., then the womb you cannot transcend. You get stuck there. And also talks about Vajra Asana. Vajra seat cannot be transcended. Here with the Vajra seat, there's few ways some identify the Vajra seat as the Vajra seat of Bodh Gaya. But some teachers say that it is not just that, it is not that. It is talking about the ultimate truth, the unchanging expanse of ultimate truth. That is what it cannot transcend. Basically, it means it cannot get there because of, I suppose, lack of wisdom. I'm sure there's an explanation to both. I cannot say this is all that is true. Anyway, and then how do you nourish yourself at that time? Because we don't have a physical body, then we can nourish ourselves through smell, depending on our own merit and karma. If we need to nourish ourselves, most of the time, us ordinary beings can only nourish ourselves with smell of food that has been dedicated to us. That is why at the time of death, afterwards, in the ceremonies, ritual practices, we roast, burn food, and then dedicate that to them. That is something that can be beneficial. I don't know if this is of any consequence, but I heard some stories of, this is just I suppose, a distraction to you, some stories of some people in Tibet when there are some of these hidden places where these people go to. And some of these people, when they went there, it is said that when they go there, the person who's going there, it doesn't feel very long. It feels very short. But the people outside, it feels so long, months and months. And one story, this is, I think, I had a very kind tutor during some of the breaks of my studying. He used to tell me stories. And he said that there is this hidden land that people go to, or sometimes these cowherds living in those sacred places lose their cows and then they chase them and then they get lost in time. For them, it's just been a few days, a week. And when they come back, the people have even done funeral services to them. And they said that they made food offerings to them. And then these people were saying that at a certain point of time, they could smell some food, and if they were hungry, they were satiated. So maybe this has something to do with that. Now, you are welcome to believe it or not. That is what is what is said. Okay, there's one thing I need to look at, the name of another sutra. Saved it. Okay. As far as what we consume, what we eat, again, it is said in this. You can, if you have the opportunity to read the sutra, question regarding death and transmigration. That is also available in 84,000 website. So, as I said earlier, usually from one after half the time, then you take the form of the next life, and it is very likely that that is the life you take, even though it is said that it is the case. But it is said that if at that time one can perform certain positive actions, certain ceremonies, you can change that. That is why usually during the 49 days, every week, on that day of the eve of the dying, we perform specific ceremonies. And also during that time, there is also a specific description and introduction that is given at that time to the person who have died. The person is summoned, and then the introduction is given so that they can change. At that time, if we can perform virtuous actions like freeing lives, helping the poor, giving food, making lamps, making offerings to the three jewels, and then dedicate it to that person, then it can change that. Even if you have the life, if you have the form that will take you to the lower realms, like the hell realms. It is said that if you're going to be born in the hell realms, you will start to feel that you are walking upside down. And if you're going to the lower realms, you'll feel certain atmosphere of darkness, or redness, or gray color, going in some kind of mists. That means that that kind of experience is probably what you're going to experience. Again, please don't misunderstand. It is not saying that any of these realms are solid, existing somewhere you can go to. It is our own mind that is making it so real. Just like right now, how things are so real. I heard from one of my from some source that even when you're using one of these goggles, okay, battery's running. No, these, what is it called? Virtual reality goggles. Even though you know you're not going to fall on a precipice, you just don't go beyond it. Why? Because of the limitations that our brain, mind, fear has created. So the experience of hell realm, animal realm, God realm, hungry ghost realm, demigod realm, including human realm, from the Buddhist point of view, is nothing but a figment of our imagination. For example, when you get together with somebody and you say, this person is my friend, my lover, is going to be my life partner, it has already become something real. But then when this person does something slightly different, why is it so painful? Who made that pain? Is that pain somewhere on that person? Does that person have something that is hurting us? Of course not. It is my gullible willingness to engage in my own delusion that has created it. So these 6 realms that we're talking about is nothing but that. But that's the problem. If it wasn't that, it would be so easy. We could go and destroy it somewhere. I'm sure, even if you had something so powerful, we could develop some nuclear explosion and go and destroy it, but we can't. That is even worse. You might think, oh, according to the Buddhist idea, it's just mind. It's not that bad. Actually, you should think the opposite. It's just mind. It is terrible. If it was a physical thing, so easy. You just go to one of these big countries, bribe those, what do you call it, scientists and things, and go and explode something. You could explode the hell realm, animal realm, but you can't. That is, the worst thing. So in a certain sense, good news is that it is your own delusion. But that is also the bad news. Knowing how our mind is, not courageous enough to get over itself, then it is terrible news. So when we are in that intermediate state, we are very much vulnerable to our own habits, our own delusions, our own emotions, positive and negative. Even though we may not have the result of engaging in negative actions as if we have a body, we will engage in negative actions similar to a dream. It will leave traces. So therefore, it's important to still not forget to not engage in negative actions at that time. Why are we told these things? What is the use of knowing how fast you can go? You don't have a physical body. These are important because then we can know. There are ways of checking. If suddenly you're so fast going from one place to the other, you see, when you are dreaming, we don't think. Why am I suddenly faced by a dragon and suddenly a cat is licking me. We don't even stop to think, is this strange? That is why we don't realize we're dreaming. In the intermediate state, when these things happen, we need to know. Do you ever remember in your dream, in our ordinary dream, seeing the sun and moon? Unlikely. It is also in the intermediate state, we don't really see it. It's sad that we don't see it. That's because these two essences are not there anymore. So if you don't see no sun and moon, but you still light, then you have to think, am I alive or not? And at least you can check this. Next time you're asleep, hopefully you will remember. Check if you can leave footprints. If you can't, if you don't see it, I don't know. At least in the text it says if you don't leave footprints, very likely you're dead. So all of these explanations aren't just gratuitous sort of fantasy stories. Each of them has a meaning, has a reason. And then it is said that in that intermediate state, in the Bardo of Becoming, how am I doing on time? Okay. Is there a limit?
There's no limit, Rinpoche.
Is it time to wrap up?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Please continue.
Just get a confirmation from her.
Cafe's not closing yet.
It is said that when we are in that part of becoming, if wherever we're going, there's some kind of light, sort of whitish light. That means that we're likely to be born in either the demigod or the God realm. So if you notice that, you can feel a little bit happy, but also not too much, because it means further delusion if you don't recognize it. And the next time, whether you recognize it, you don't know. At least at this moment, we have a precious human life. Thanks to the Buddha's kindness, thanks to Guru Rinpoche, we have these guidebooks. In the future, whether we will have that, whether we will remember, we have no idea. At this moment, we have this. And if wherever we go, it's some kind of dark, shadowy experience, then it is likely a precursor of hell realm. And if it is sort of reddish, then hungry ghost realm. And if it is sort of yellowish, then human and animal. So those are helpful to know. I suppose it is only helpful if we think of this, remember, and then at that time, we know what to do. Otherwise, it's not much. What I'm reading from, it's the instructions on somebody who has died, how to show them, what to tell them. But to do this, it won't help at the time of death unless we have some reminder, unless we know right now. Like if we want to go into the city of Bangkok, there is this street. This street leads to the Emerald Buddha. this street leads to the Golden Temple. Knowing that, or this street, this guy who is driving me like he is crazy. You know, these taxi drivers in Bangkok, they drive these noisy, powerful car, and as if you're being propelled into the, and they make the air conditioning extremely cold. When you get to the destination, which is hot, you are almost like a, what do you call it, ice cube that is melting. Oh, sorry, I lost why I'm talking about it. Okay. So, yes. These colors, if you have that, if ever in your dream you are in a car like that, in a freezing place, then maybe in your intermediate state, you got stuck in a Bangkok taxi. So now we have to wake up from that. So again, in that intermediate state, if you're walking upright, then possibly human and God realm experience. If you're walking sideways like a crab, then possibly animal realm. Or like, bent. And if you're walking upside down, then possibly hell realm and hungry ghost realm. So if you're walking upside down and the light is yellowish, then you know where you're going to be born. If you're walking upright and it is yellowish, I suppose it means human. And then again, if your mind is clear, then possibly in one of the higher realms. If the mind is dull, confused, then possibly the lower realms. It just means that the seed of the lower realms are ripening. And also it is said that if you're going to be experiencing the lower realms, depending on whether your attachment, ignorance, attachment, confusion, and anger. If your attachment is strong, then you will see precipice that is sort of reddish. If the motion of the affliction of ignorance or confusion is strong, then sort of grayish. If your aggressive or paranoia is strong, then dark precipice is what you will experience. You will be walking close to it or about to fall into it. And it is said that you also experience frightening sounds. Not necessarily frightening if you know that it is just your own perception. If you don't, then they're frightening. Like landslide, the mountains disintegrating in front of you or on you, or like the sound of flooding just by your place, or everything burning, the sound of the sparkling of fire. I haven't had that directly, but I've seen some forest fires, especially on television, and some of them you can hear the wind blowing and the sparks coming and the sound that comes from it. Imagine how we would feel if we were actually there. Once I had this opportunity, or not really an opportunity, it happened to me when I was in South Portugal. Our place was surrounded by fire, and I could see the burnt embers being blown by the wind from one side of the house to the other. And I'm sure in the time of intermediate state, the sound is multiplied. And sometimes these sounds are like thunder, like hurricanes, thunder falling on you. When these happen, if one can, it is really, really helpful. If one can and have trained to realize this is all my own perception. And then other kind of experiences that you have that time. At this moment, it is possible, very likely for many of us, because of our past habits, we don't realize that we have died. And due to that, we go and hover around our relatives. Who are grieving for us, crying, lamenting. And we can go there. Most of us, we might go there and talk to them. But they don't hear you. They don't see you. And when that happens, we get so frustrated, angry. We have lost our previous life, have not taken the next, and in between, we are hanging in empty space, that kind of feeling. And at that time, those who are left behind, what do they think? What do they do? As a child, whenever I was sick, my mother used to tell me stories. And one of her stories that she used to tell me was of Delok, it's called in Tibetan, those who come back from death. And one of them is called Delok Lingsa Chuji, and one was called Nangsa Wimpu. But anyway, Lingsa Chuji, she was saying that when this woman died, or before dying, she asked her husband to please, because she was the one who had the finances. So she told him, I would like this, this, and this to happen. When I die, please use these for me. And he was honest, saying, no, that's not going to happen. I need this. We need this to live on. We're not going to use it for that. We'll use a very little bit. And then once she died, it was even more difficult because they didn't. For many of us, as we know what happens when our relatives die, what are we thinking of? All of us are possibly, even if it is not visibly, already thinking, if only I could get this, if only I could get that. So it's so difficult for them because they know what we're thinking, even if we don't say it. So, if possible, before you die, you make those happen so that nobody else can do anything. If you can't, then let go. So it is really important from right now, we learn to let go and make sure that that happens. Like the story I was telling some time ago about this man. Before he died, he jotted down absolutely everything he possessed, down to the smallest old photos that he had, saying, this is going to go to this child and this child, of this wife, this wife. He had more than one wife. So he had jotted down everything, down to the material with which he was going to make his coffin. He even went to the carpenter and made his own coffin. At least then, it's easy. Then you don't have to worry so much. When he died, after dying, within 1 week, his wife did not have to sit there and think, what is going to happen? She had done everything. That is really a great way of dying. So, these signs that makes it clear to us that we have died is something that we need to remember. As I said earlier, first, we can't leave imprints on sand or ashes or things. And it is also said, you can't do this. You can't snap your finger and make a sound. And you can go through matter. These are signs. When you see these, know that you don't have a physical body. And when you go to see your relatives, friends, they don't answer. If one doesn't answer, maybe they're angry at us. If all of them don't answer, maybe we've done something that all of them are angry at me. But if you punch them, they still don't notice. That must mean that we're died. If you punch them enough and they still don't punch back at you, either you have really, really patient relatives or you're dead. That's up to you to choose which one it is. You can go around thinking, I have such patient relatives who don't punch me back even if I punch them, or they don't feel you. And then you can see through things. You can understand what people are thinking. That also means that possibly you are not alive anymore. And it doesn't stay all the time. It's sort of mixed, intermittent ability to see things. These signs mean that you don't have a body. And also, as I said earlier, there is light, but you can't really see the sun and moon. Stars, you don't see them. So, if you suspect that you have died, check that these signs are present. If there are, then it means that we are in the intermediate state. And then there are also other kind of signs. One thing is that it is uncertain where you are. Sometimes you're in an empty house. Sometimes in a cave. It's not like here right now, we're here in this room. And you don't suddenly think, oh, wow, how did I get here? I'm in the toilet. While I'm in the toilet, suddenly I'm at table. It doesn't happen. For us, when you're eating and you have to go to the toilet, you have to get up and go there. You don't naturally get there. So these are uncertain signs that happens in the time. Intermediate state. Not only that, our companion is also uncertain. One day we're with this, one instant you're here, next instant you're with somebody else. One instant you're with a drunkard, next instant you're with somebody else. Sometimes you're with some demons, sometimes you're with some kind of godly beings. This is also a sign that you're in the intermediate state. And also, food and clothing are uncertain. Our dwelling is also uncertain. Our conduct is also uncertain. And also, our mind is uncertain. Momentary thoughts and things arise. One instant we're doing this, another instant we've completely forgotten that we're doing something else. At this moment, that's happening when we're getting old. We don't remember what we're talking about. The young ones maybe don't have it. So I suppose it's a sign that we're getting closer to that. Right now, we're talking about something nice. Next instant, you have no idea what you're doing, who you were talking to, what you were talking about. Just like in a dream. Even within a dream, we don't remember what we were doing before, what we were doing the next. That's something like that that happens in the intermediate state. We are, it is said, just like a feather being blown around in a hurricane. One moment, we're in a nice place. The next, the mountain is crumbling. The earth is shaking. Everything is dark. We're in a torrent of water. The forest is on fire. We just are like someone who is suspended in space. Sometimes we're in the middle of a storm of hail, weapons, frightening animals, frightening monsters. All of these happen just because of the state of mind we're in and the seed that we have sown in our mind. And then suddenly in the middle of that, we think of our friends, relatives, we go there, we're ignored. Then suddenly you will feel traumatized. I have died. Traumatized that you realize you have died again. Then what should I do? Panic can set in. We can see people using our food, wealth, our belongings for us. Maybe if you are a man, everyone is using your car, your motorbike, your Ferrari, your Porsche, your, what is it? Ford, your whatever. If you're a lady, I don't know what ladies consider to be really, really precious. Something that you have got from your beloved parents. And you see other people using it, your husbands and children selling it. What do we feel at that time? What we need to do is remember that all of this is just the perception of a deluded mind. That there is nothing really, truly existing out there. That is why in the Bodhisattva, what is it? The way of the Bodhisattva, it is said, who created these burning metal world? Who made these flames? All of these are made by the mind. This is what the guide, the Buddha, has said. That is what we have to remember. All these perceptions, experiences, are nothing but deluded perception. Beautiful forms, nice sound, good smell, delicious taste, smooth touch. These are all delusions. Ugly faces, bad, disharmonious sound are also just delusions of the mind. So don't get caught in rejecting them nor chasing after them. Likewise, frightening, monstrous enemies and loving friends and relatives are also just deluded perceptions. Therefore, refrain from engaging in hatred towards enemies, the perception of enemies, nor craving or grasping towards relatives, beneficial friends, pleasant friends. Also pleasant sensation of warmth or burning sensation of heat, cooling sensation of freezing, painful cold are just delusions of the mind. So refrain from grasping to not wanting to suffer from heat nor from cold. These graspings, again, are what imprisons us. Even if we are feeling burnt, don't give in to the grasping of not having that and wanting cool. Even if you are feeling frozen, don't give in to the grasping of not feeling frozen and wanting warmth. These are all delusions. If one feels, if one identifies as a female and feel attachment to the opposite sex or the same sex, whatever our preference is, don't give in to that. If one is male, again, whatever we are grasping at, don't give in to that. Recognize this as deluded perception. At that time, in the intermediate state, whether we identify with male or female, know that that is just a perception of the mind. We have gotten deluded into thinking that there is something solid out there. And if you feel strong grasping to a place, then you might be born there, get stuck to that place. It's called miraculous birth, whether it is in the hell realm or the God realm. Whether you are grasping to warmth or humidity, if you do that, then you might again take birth in that area, in that environment. Who knows as what? As an insight. Whatever tickles your fancy, if you grasp at it, whether it is beautiful place, nice smell, don't get deluded by that. If you are chased by monsters, just like in a dream, decide that this is a delusion and don't be afraid. And breathe, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant. Transcend hope and fear at that time. Expectation and grasping. Freedom from fear. as it is said in the sutras like Samadhi Raja Sutra, where it says, just like the apparitions produced by an illusionist, be it a horse, elephant, chariot, none of them are as they appear. Know that all phenomena is so. I saw once, I think on television, many years ago, an illusionist who created this illusion where he lifted the Buckingham Palace. On television, at least, it looked real. But of course, in spite of it looking real, we do have to make sure that we don't think that he actually lifted the Buckingham Palace. I don't think that the British government would have accepted that the Queen was being played with, even that. Even if I believe that he was capable, either they would have to say the Queen has been moved out and then he's going to lift up the Queen. They didn't say that. So I believe he didn't actually lift it, but I did experience some kind of entertainment from it. And then also in another sutra, it says, just like is it working? Okay. How much time do I have? Keep going. Okay. The boss said, keep going. Is that? Okay. Okay, no, it's okay. So, even though, all these descriptions sound very far-fetched, and if we believe in them really, it becomes quite frightening. there is a silver lining there. Our consciousness at that time has a certain clarity. And it's easy to change. So at that time, of course, if our negative conduct starts to take the upper hand, then it will, of course, connect us with frightening, difficult experiences. There's no doubt about that. But on the other hand, if we can give rise to openness, compassion, devotion, and give rise to positive mental states, mindset, then again, rebirth, a positive rebirth, and liberation, and ultimately progress in the path is also no doubt possible. In that intermediate state, we're really like on a scale. Whichever part of the scale gets a small weight, it can just, what do you call it, tip in either way. Just in the same way as there is tremendous possibility of tipping into the lower realms, there is also as much possibility of becoming free, attaining liberation. It is said that in that moment, in that state, even for an instant, if we meditate, practice, there is as much result as practicing years and months while we are alive. So that's also a good thing. It's not only difficult, frightening things. So therefore, not allowing our mind to fall prey to our conflicting, afflicted states is very important. Not only now, but at that time. And to remember that all of these are just our perception. That all phenomena is just dreamlike, illusory. All my perceptions are illusory, not truly existing. And then, based on that, whatever path we are following, whatever teachings we have received, to continue with that. In the best case scenario, you will be liberated instantaneously at that time. At the very worst, we can take birth in the higher realms as humans or in the God realms. That is also no doubt possible. Therefore, this is something that we should say to that person or to ourselves at that time. Do not get attached to those belonging people. When we think of people at that time, how are we thinking of them? Relatives. How are we thinking of them? We think of relatives. We might think that we're thinking of them as people that we love. But actually, we're thinking of them as my relatives. It's more a possession than anything. Belongings. So with all of them, don't get stuck. We are really like flies that get stuck on the glue papers. And don't allow insecurities, miserliness, fear, attachment. First of all, there's nothing we can do about them. And not only that, by doing that, we get caught in the cycle of existence. So, friends, whatever your friends are doing, your dearest friend now has a other best friend. You might feel left behind. Let go of that. Your father and mother have now another favorite child. Don't feel left out. That is just attachment. Let go of that. Right now, at that time, your perception of it, offer it. That will benefit you. And if you are there before you die, let go. Most of us, when we think of what to do, what is left behind, we get stuck to it. This person should have this, that person should have this. And even while we are on the deathbed, we're giving advice to people, saying, oh, this is how you should invest. Invest in, what is it called? Ecological things. Don't invest in this when you're gone. None of this will make any difference. At that time, let go. So, at that time, either before dying, while dying, after having died, don't take refuge in belongings, in society. Don't take refuge in your legacy. What will people say of me? So therefore, before I die, I must have my name on this road. I must have my bust put on up there. Give that all up. You might feel all of these things nagging at you, but let go of them. This is what we are told. So now what can we do right now again? So right now, before we die, everything that we are experiencing right now, train in thinking. This is Bardo of Becoming. I am in the Bardo of Becoming. So whether I sit on this seat or that seat, whether I go to this country or that country, it matters little. Whether I smell this person's fart or that person's fart, it doesn't matter. Whether my neighbor likes to sweep their dirt under my doormat or not, this is the intimated state. to really train in believing that. And also at night, when you're sleeping, before you sleep, think that until it actually happens in your dream. So that right now we are able to dispel this ignorance, that this wake state is something solid. Basically, it's saying, get packing, get ready. When you're going to travel, we have to pack. Right now, I'm not saying we should pack our luggage because you can't carry it, but pack up your neurotic luggage. Get ready with the sense of freedom, sense of reality. Free yourself from thinking that you can carry your kitchen sink to the next life, your toilet to your next life. You know, we all have such preferences to live in this country, that country. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't have preferences, but underlying all that, it makes absolutely no difference. Because right now, we're in one intermediate state of living in which, at this moment, we're operating without any control. We have no way of stopping. We're going to die. We are in the process of allowing, willingly or unwillingly, for this world to dismantle itself by nature. So it doesn't mean become defeatist. It just means become realistic. Do everything you can to keep this body healthy. Whether you need to lift weight, whether you need to do diet or eat, what is it called? Eat healthy, undelicious food that makes you depressed looking at it. Do it if it will give us a few more seconds of training in getting ready for the next moment. Pretend that this boiled slush is really beautiful, good. Those are all fine. But at least remember that this boiled slush is not going to make much more difference if we think that this boiled slush is ultimately what will save me. Then we're also fooling ourselves. So there are many ways of relating to the intermediate state, depending on what kind of practice we're doing. The Buddha, in his compassionate, infinite compassion and wisdom, taught countless ways. So whether it is based on Sutrayana, the Vajrayana, there are so many ways of preparing for this intermediate state based on the different capacity of sentient beings. For those who have been introduced to the Vajrayana, again, according to the great perfection, Mahamudra, according to the development phase, completion phase, there's different ways of relating to it. But one of them, it is said for the beings of I suppose for amongst us, beings of the most powerful faculty is the faculty to have devotion to our guide as the Buddha, to our teacher as the Buddha, and then train in preparing for the intermediate state. Some sentient beings don't really need much artifice to show them the path, artifice of explanations, etc. In the very beginning, we are able to have confidence, devotion, point that just the connection of thought of our teachers completely takes over our world. Where it is said, the devotion to our teachers makes it so that our whole appearance, perception, whole world is the Guru's world. That's all we think of. That's all we talk about. That's all we aspire to. In which our perception is never separate from the atmosphere of the Guru. If we can do that, then that connection with the Guru, with an authentic Guru, can prepare us or connect us at that time. For that, we need to be able to have connection, confidence in our teacher, that they are the embodiment of all teachers, all Buddhas, and therefore also they are the embodiment of the Dharma and the Sangha. That they are the union of all refuges, and that we're able to fully connect with them. At that time, all we need is just that connection and pray, be able to call out to the Guru. And not only that, but knowing, realizing that all these perceptions in the intermediate state is just the perception of my mind. And therefore transform it. That everything we perceive is the Guru. The Guru's manifestation. Everything, every form that we perceive, that we are grasping at, no, it doesn't have any reality. just like a reflection in the mirror. And then, while perceiving it, know it has no existence. All sound that we hear, whether it is frightening or beautiful, it is also audible yet empty. That is actually none other than the sound of the Guru's speech. All thoughts that arise are also aware yet empty, none other than the Guru's mind. And then learn to rest in that. That can transmute all impure perception of sound, sight, thoughts into the body, speech, and mind of the Guru. So that is really said, it is for the best of the best capacities. Now, if one is not like that, then if one has the sort of, let's say, merely best, not the best of capacities, just merely good capacity, best capacity, and you have some training in development phase and completion phase, then we need to use that if that is our practice. For those of us who do trust our teachers, but still don't have enough trust in them as that they are the real Buddha, that they are no different from the Buddha, then with that kind of devotion, you can't really get through further with that devotion, with that, let's say, not activated, amplified devotion. So then we need to practice whatever path we're following. For example, if we are doing the development phase practice, where we see ourselves, our own body, as an illusory form, empty yet apparent, and then let it dissolve. The grasping to that form, let it dissolve and rest in that. The grasping to the shape, form, the identity of ours. Not only that, oneself, everything, realizing everything is illusory. Observe it, analyze it, recognize it, and then they will all dissolve. And then look at one's own body. Even that will dissolve, and then rest in that. If you're doing a development phase practice, and we have enough devotion to do that practice, but not quite enough devotion to think, see the Buddha, our teacher, as inseparable from the Buddha, then this is what we have to do. So based on the development phase, completion phase, we need to use the method that what each of them explains. in brief, we need to know that all these perceptions are illusory. So then, rest in that space. And then appear from that as the deity, just like, it's said, just like fish jumping out of water, appear in the shape of the deity. So if we don't have the ability to use the development phase, and then whatever completion phase advice you have on how to relate to the intermediate state of becoming with becoming, then either you have received it but you can't, then for medium capacity beings, then we need to practice what we can. So when we realize we are dead, we need to learn to not be afraid of that. And then know that the defects of our attachment, aggression, how much they are a cause of suffering. And then decide, now I have to go to some pure land. And to do that, you can't really sit around thinking, this is a nice place, I want to stay here, it's beautiful. You have to realize, or remind yourself that this place is illusory, not real. There are many ways. One of them is then think in front of you. Buddha field of, for example, Sukhavati, Amitabha's Buddha field. And really think that Amitabha is there, our teacher in the form of Amitabha, the Buddha, Guru Rinpoche in the form of Amitabha. And then think of your consciousness in the shape that's of a white sphere. If you want a shape, letter, then like a letter A. And that it sort of springs out of the top of our head and dissolves into the heart center of Amitabha. And then rest. This is the transference at the time of intermediate state. So, for that, we need some renunciation to this place. See, the idea of renunciation is not really because we have a certain preference for certain locations. That is again the difference between the renunciants who are wanting to be awakened and renunciants who are just wanting to be a renunciant as a, what do you call it, as a choice. From the Buddhist point of view, for somebody who wants to become awakened, wants to become free from samsara, renunciation is not a choice. There is no choice. Like if somebody puts poisonous food in front of you or shit in front of you, you're not eating it out of choice, thinking this is not as good as this. It's just that there's no way. That is the idea of renunciation. Now, for that to happen, we need to know why we are renouncing. So it's not like we are renouncing mundane life because we prefer, between brackets, spiritual life, like somebody wearing some kind of flowing clothes and will walk as if, what is it called? They're on some kind of drug, as if they're walking on water. Many times when we think of renunciants, that's what we think. At least most of the time when we think, oh, I must follow the spiritual path, what is actually happening? That's only something we know. But we need to make sure that it is based on the premise of our path, what it is that we want. If we want to be free from the cycle of existence, suffering and cause of suffering, then these perceptions that we have of this world, we need to want to be free of it. Not because something like this is not good, but basically how my mind is relating to it. It is making it into a trap. So therefore, these are all not only my mind relating to it, it is actually made up by my mind. This grasping and rejecting. This world, this habit I have. So we need to want to be free from it. So that's why then here, even within this world, then we make this aspiration to be born in Sukhabhati. This Buddha field of Amitabha is the result of Amitabha's aspiration. This world of ours is a result of our own deluded mind and actions. So we are told that this is what we need to keep in mind. Because this is the aspiration of Amitabha, then this ground is smooth, made up of the wisdom mind of Amitabha that appears in the form of jewel ground. And all sentient beings there are born in a lotus. It is filled with bodhisattvas, sublime beings, So this is what we need to think of. And in that place, on a throne, there is the Tathagata, Amitabha, who is so beautiful that it is impossible to be satiated just looking at him. In my case, like looking at the face of my teachers, like Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche, Rinpoche, Kangyur Rinpoche. If I look at their face, I could sit there for ages, never be satisfied. As I was saying to some of my friends, my father's students used to come, they would sit in front of him every day while they were in Darjeeling. They would come and sit there, look at his face for hours, 3 or 4 hours. Then after a while, because they were not used to sitting cross-legged, their knees would make them get up and go. But otherwise, they would sit there. Could do that with Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche. Even now, we have the fortune of having teachers like the Son Sajjatijan Rinpoche. If I could, I would sit there in front of him, just look at his face. But if I did that, then I would get in his way of benefiting others. So, can't. But fortunately, due to modern technology, we have photos. We can just sit there and look at them. That is really what Amitabha should look like. If you want to know what Amitabha looks like, choose one of their faces and then sit there. If necessary, go gaga, just look at that. And then allow yourself to be melted by their kindness, their compassion. Allow yourself to be open, vulnerable, devoted to them, to that Amitabha. Due to the blessings of Amitabha and your merit, you instantly will be born there in the lotus. The moment you're born in that lotus, we will see Amitabha. And then we will get teachings, and he will tell us how we can become enlightened. He will predict us. This is how you will become enlightened. And then, from that moment on, we will develop the qualities. And then, in countless universes, we will be able to emanate emanations and benefit sentient beings. That is a prayer we should make, prayer of aspiration. So I will conclude with that prayer of aspiration. It is from the King of Aspirations, where it says, in that delightful, maybe I'll start with this. As my final breath at last expires, I'm reading from this latest translation of the King of Aspirations that has been prepared for chanting. As my final breath at last expires, may all veils dissolve, so that I see before me Amitabha, boundless life, and pass into his pure realm of utter bliss. There I shall perfect and realize all I have here aspired for and have prayed, fulfilling these grand wishes for the sake of every world, so far as each endures. In that delightful Buddha mandala, from the exquisite lotus blossom born, I shall receive from boundless light himself the telling of my Buddhahood to be. Once in this land, such having been foretold, countless magic forms I shall send forth by power of the mind to every realm, thus benefiting beings evermore. So this is my humble, feeble attempt and very distracted attempt at reminding myself and possibly you of what this Bardo of Becoming might be, how we might actually prepare for it, and if we are there, what to do. So therefore, it is so important that we don't wait for that time. Remember right now what is going to happen. And right now, whatever practice we're doing, know that it is something that can be used, so useful at that time. And mainly to do that for the sake of all sentient beings. And if you're interested in how to do it, you can search. There's so many teachings and teachers that are available. So search out an authentic teacher and teaching that can be adapted to you. And if you need books, even in the mind training, 7-point mind training by Geshe Chekawa, Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche's commentary on it, it explains from the point of view of mind training how to relate to dying, and therefore also what we can do at the time of the path of becoming. Those are good books you can start with. And then I'm sure all of you have the book, Living is Dying. I'm sure you are reading it, you're studying it, practicing it. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for providing me with this opportunity to think of this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, dear Rinpoche. We feel so blessed to be able to share this time with you and to hear your profound teachings and guiding us through the Bardo of Becoming and preparing us. Thank you. Thank you so, so much.
Kathy.
I'd also like to thank our hosts and our interpreters, Olivia, Akiko, Bella, Ina, Chris, Anna, Paula, Tashi Wang, Mo, and Ha. Many of them are in time zones where it's like 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. They've been interpreting since midnight. It's being posted. And as this is our last session, We'd like to dedicate for 2023, we'd like to dedicate the merit accumulated throughout the year by the Living is Dying and Bardo Cafe programs, by joining Rinpoche in chanting the dedication fulfilling all aspirations from the 84,000 reading room.
The noble dedication, fulfilling all aspirations. I bow my head at the feet of all the Buddhas to the teaching and to the assembly of fully ordained monks. Blessed Buddhas residing in the inexpressibly many world systems of the 10 directions, and Bodhisattva great beings who have entered the higher stages of complete awakening, please pay heed to me. Whatever sins and non-virtuous actions I have committed and accumulated from cyclic existences, undiscoverable beginning, in this life and in other lives as a householder and as a renunciant, what I have done physically, verbally, and mentally, what I have exhorted others to do and what I have rejoiced in others doing, what I have done knowingly or unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally, and what I have remembered or forgotten, what I have done under the influence of desire, under the influence of anger, under the influence of ignorance, under the influence of relationships with those who are not virtuous spiritual friends, under the influence of ignorance, under the influence of place, and under the influence of birth at a particular time, violations of proper ethics, violations of ethical rules, and violation of natural ethics. The faults I have engaged in towards the Buddha, the teaching, the assembly, my father and mother, my abbot, my spiritual master, or other teachers, through the 3 kinds of physical wrongdoing, the 4 kinds of verbal wrongdoing, and the 3 kinds of mental wrongdoing, turning sentient beings towards perverted views, creating obstacles for sentient beings engaged in proper practice, dedicating my root of virtue incorrectly, speaking falsely to a Tathagata, teaching non-Dharma as Dharma, and teaching Dharma as non-Dharma, teaching what is not the Vinaya as a Vinaya, and teaching the Vinaya as not the Vinaya, teaching what is not the path as the path, and teaching what is the path as not the path, that clouded by whichever obscurations I gave rise to non-virtuous qualities, and did not establish my mind properly in virtue, that clouded by other obscurations I was distracted and mentally agitated. All such faults I confess. In whatever ways I was childish, in whatever ways foolish, in whatever ways confused, in whatever ways unwise, and in whatever ways misguided. All such faults I confess as faults. Having confessed those faults as faults, I vow that in the future I will not act in such ways again. Thus I recite a 2nd time, and thus a 3rd time. Again, blessed Buddhas, please pay heed to me. I rejoice that all the Buddhas who formerly were Bodhisattvas completely accomplished the 6 perfections, which is to say that they completely and manifestly awakened to unexcelled, perfect, complete enlightenment by means of generosity, ethical discipline, endurance, diligence, meditative absorption, and wisdom, that they turned the wheel of the Dharma, blew the conch of the Dharma, beat the drum of the Dharma, and set ablaze the lamp of the Dharma, that they led the mass of sentient beings to the practice of the Dharma in accordance with the Dharma, and that they taught the methods of the holy Dharma, and I rejoice in the roots of virtue by which the Pratyeka Buddhas realized the state of a Pratyeka Buddha, in the roots of virtue by which the Shravakas realized the state of a Shravaka, realized the 3 knowledges and the 6 super knowledges, and manifested discernment, the meditative absorptions, the liberations, the meditative concentrations, and the meditative attainments in the root of virtue by which sentient beings completely overcome falling into the lower infernal realms of the hells, the realms of animals, and the realms of the Lord of the dead. In their abandoning of the primary afflictions of desire, anger, and ignorance, and the secondary afflictions, in their longevity, health, good complexions, excellent figures, great splendor, great power, high status, great wealth, and great wisdom, in their abandoning of all roots of non-virtue and the possession of all roots of virtue, and in even as little as a single prostration, joining the palms for prayers even a single time, the offering of a single flower, and sentient beings who give rise to just a single moment of faith. In all of these things I rejoice. Supremely pleased, I rejoice. I rejoice with rejoicing that is most excellent, supreme, best, perfect, unsurpassed, highest, even higher than the highest, unequaled, equal to the unequaled, matchless, and pure, completely pure like the sky. I exhort those who, having understood all of the holy Dharma, know how to delight in the Dharma, how to discern the Dharma, how to generate all roots of virtue, how to protect all beings, and how to nurture and dedicate all good qualities, who know all the thousands of compilations of the Dharma, and all the meditative absorptions, liberations, meditative concentrations, and meditative attainments, who know the vows, the prayers, and the exhaustion of defilements, who know beings, intentions, latent dispositions, temperament, and intrinsic nature, and understand them correctly, yet who, having that understanding, also know that sentient beings do not delight in instruction and so remain at ease, rest their mind, and do not teach the Dharma. I exhort them for the benefit of the many, for the happiness of the many, out of compassion for the world, for the sake of the many masses of beings, and for the benefit and happiness of gods and humans. I entreat them to explain the holy Dharma. I entreat them to turn the wheel of the Dharma. I entreat them to blow the conch of the Dharma. I entreat them to beat the drum of the Dharma. I entreat them to set the lamp of the Dharma ablaze. I entreat them to establish the mass of sentient beings in the practice of the Dharma, in accordance with the Dharma. I entreat those who have gained mastery over life, mastery over emanation, mastery of blessing, and mastery of miraculous power, those who have and have not gained mastery of ripening the mass of sentient beings to be trained, who have forsaken life, intending to enter final nirvana. I entreat them for the benefit of the many, for the happiness of the many, out of compassion for the world, for the sake of the many masses of beings, and for the benefit and happiness of gods and humans. I entreat them to grant the blessing of the conditions for their longevity. I dedicate whatever roots of virtue I have created and accumulated from cyclic existence's undiscoverable beginning, what I have done physically, verbally, and mentally, what I have exhorted others to do, and what I have rejoiced in others doing, meritorious deeds arisen from generosity, meritorious deeds arisen from ethical discipline, meritorious deeds arisen from meditation, and even causing just a single sentient being to give rise to a single moment of faith. All of these I dedicate to all sentient beings. By these roots of virtue, may all the roots of virtue of all sentient beings be completely perfected. Having a long life, health, a good complexion, an excellent figure, great splendor, great power, high status, great wealth, great wisdom, possessions, magic spells, and medicine, encountering virtuous spiritual friends, listening to the holy Dharma, directing the mind appropriately, the practice in accordance with the Dharma, the abandoning of the primary afflictions of desire, anger, and ignorance, as well as the secondary afflictions, completely overcoming falling into the lower infernal realms of the hells, the realms of animals, and the realms of the Lord of the dead. attaining all the meditative absorptions, liberations, meditative concentrations, and meditative attainments, completely overcoming physical and mental unhappiness, attaining all bliss and happiness, attaining the excellence of the enlightened attributes of the Shravakas, the excellence of the enlightened attributes of the Pratyeka Buddhas, the 10 powers of the Tathagatas, the 4 states of fearlessness, the 4 discernments, the 18 distinctive qualities of a Buddha, great loving kindness, great compassion, great joy, great equanimity, the vanquishing of the latent tendencies, the state of non-forgetfulness, the state of omniscience, the state of the knowledge of all the aspects, the state of inexhaustible wisdom, the state of inexhaustible knowledge, the state of inexhaustible courage, the state of inexhaustible merit, the state of the sky treasury, the state of the jewel holder, and the unsurpassed wisdom of omniscience, and whatever mundane and transcendent roots of virtue there are, may all of these come to be for all sentient beings. Whatever fruit there may be from the merit of dedicating my roots of virtue to all sentient beings, by the roots of virtue of having so dedicated them, having completely and manifestly awakened to unexcelled, perfect, complete enlightenment, may I ferry those sentient beings across who have not crossed over. May I liberate those who are not yet liberated. May I give relief to those who are unrelieved. May I cause all those who have not entered Nirvana to enter Nirvana, and may I establish them in the realm of ultimate benefit and bliss. Thus I recite a 2nd time, and thus a 3rd time. The noble dedication fulfilling all aspirations is concluded.
Thank you. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you next year on January the 14th, when Eric Pema Kunsang will give teachings on the beautiful Bardo Song of Reminding Oneself. Until then, please take care and stay well. And thank you for joining us. This was a longer session than usual, but a very special session. And I hope you've all gained as much from it as what we have in hosting it. Thank you again to dear Rinpoche.